ये मुस्कान की चमकान कहीं और.
That is till date the highest viewed stand-up clip on YouTube. Artists like Zakir and even AIB to some extent were true to what their roots were. And now, again full circle, Zakir has gone and sold out Madison Square Garden, man. He sold 10,000 tickets in Toronto. Zakir has gone and opened up venues that never did stand-up comedy ever. When I left, he had done some 100 cities in India.
Hello and welcome to Your Heart's Content, a YouTube show where we're going to look at the aspects of content that really matter, the thought processes, the systems, and the inspiration. I'm your host, Deepak Gopalakrishnan, aka Chuck, and I'm Chutzpah. In this show, we are going to be speaking to some people who think deeply about the space of content. Creators, musicians, folks in the business of content, all in a bid to try and understand this space of content a little better and how you could benefit from it. In this episode, we speak to Dhruv Sheth. Dhruv is currently the co-founder and CEO of the M19 Collective, an IP development studio. But before that, he used to be the COO at OML Entertainment, where he started off as an intern, and that story and that rise is pretty interesting, and he traverses a whole lot of terrain between the starting point and the ending point. We speak to Dhruv about a whole bunch of things because he's kind of like seen the rise of a lot of subcultures in the country, especially comedy and its development. He's seen not just the rise of it from a content point of view, but also from a business point of view. So we have a lot of interesting intersections to talk about. We speak about independent music. We speak about music festivals. Of course, we speak about comedy and everything that's happened in the scene. But we also speak about a whole bunch of other more meta topics, such as the things that happen on the fringes versus the mainstream and how that develops into the future and so on and so forth. And importantly, for members of the 6% club who might be watching this, we also speak about a lot of the struggles and the journey of a lot of the artists that OML and Dhruv have ended up managing over the years and how those lessons could apply to their lives as young content creators. It was one of the most fun conversations that we've had on the series, and we hope you enjoy it. This is our chat with M19 Collective and former OML's Dhruv Sheth. Dhruv, thanks so much for coming on, man.
Cheers, man. Always, anything for you.
We have so much to talk about creator economy and, the various forms of content and all that. So let's take you all the way back. Is it true? Please lay to rest these rumors that I've been hearing that your first job at OML was carrying amps at NH7 Weekender.
I had applied for that job.
Okay.
It's a funny story. I basically went to the Weekender in 2011 for the first time ever. 23-year-old Dhruv has gone to Weekender. I was a sober child. I didn't drink. I didn't do anything. I went to Weekender the first time after my CA exams. I gave my CA exams, and after my paper, I went to Weekender.
Like on the same day?
On the next day. I missed the first day. I missed Friday, and then I went for the weekend, Saturday, Sunday, because Friday was my last paper. I gave the paper, left for Pune in the morning, reached and went for Weekender. Got drunk there for the first time. And then just thought, if you remember the 2011 Weekender, I had a Together stage.
Yeah.
The one with the giant wheel, which was the backdrop. So I stood there. I remember distinctly at that was the last gig that happened, and it was all of the indie musicians that we love together on stage playing covers. So it was there, Karsh Kale playing, I think it was Money or Time by Pink Floyd on his tabla, and I was like, this is heaven. This is all I want to do in my life. And I came back. I had a job. I went to the job on a Monday morning and wrote cold email to jobs at OML saying that I will do what... I just wrote an email. I wrote like a love letter is what I wrote to OML and said how everything that they do is epic and I will do any job that you will give me, including carrying amps.
Also, you specifically mentioned...
I mentioned carrying amps along with sweeping floors, along with dragging bags to the airport for the artists. I offered my services. But within that, I also mentioned that I happen to be from the finance background. I studied CA. I gave my final CA before going to Weekender. So in that, I wrote that I have a finance background and I've done auditing for a long time. And at that point of time, Ajay, who was the co-founder and the COO at that time of OML, was the only guy with a finance background at OML. So I think they had a control F finance account search, and they're like, call this guy. So I got a call back in 15 minutes.
Wow.
Which was insane because I just wanted to write that email out so I could get it out of my system. I had no ambition of doing, I had no expectation of getting in. So I got in, and then they called me for an interview. 2 days later, I'm at the OML office.
Wow. Did you ever end up carrying amps?
I did. I ended up doing a lot. I cleaned toilets. I did a lot. But when you get into weekender, it's like...
Yeah. It doesn't matter. Designations don't matter.
It's like, imagine your house, right? If you have guests coming over, you're going to clean everything.
Absolutely.
So weekender is a 24-acre house that you're building.
Wow, that's a beautiful way of putting it.
Yeah. And so then there are 20,000 guests that are coming. So every single detail you want to take care of as you would take care of your house. So if anything was, and I saw that from Vijay, who's our founder at OML, he would pick up trash and put it in the bin. He would go into toilets, smell check. Smell check was a thing, like sound check. Like we used to go into toilets and do smell checks and make sure that it was up to the speed, because we're all consumers of what we were creating. We'd all been to festivals abroad. We'd all been to live events over here. And we knew what would go wrong, what we wouldn't like. Essentially, the way you would do stuff at your house that you would like others also to sort of do, right? So in that sense, it was very hands-on, and I wouldn't take it any other way. I think that really shaped the way I worked in the future.
Yeah, and just moving on from there, right? I think, I know we joke about this and all, but I genuinely find that your trajectory from intern to now, or when you left then COO, to be very remarkable, not just in the growth itself. Sure, the whole janitor to CEO story is there many times in business history, but also the diversity of roles you covered. Right, there was of course the finance, but at various points of time you were also head of marketing. I think when I joined OML, you were the head of talent management, or you were close to it, or something of that sort. So a whole bunch of roles. What strung it all together? Because these all seem like seemingly different departments, let alone functions.
Yeah, I think, again, when I started working at OML, I think we were 23 people. So it was pretty much like a startup.
Sure.
It was literally a startup run by cool kids, essentially. That had been given a bunch of money and now you figure out what you want to do. So we all were trying to figure out everything that we wanted to do. And the beauty of being at OML is because of what we did at Weekender. A Weekender was a collection of marketing, programming, production, food, beverage, alcohol, like all of those things. Yeah. So if you look at Weekender as an ecosystem, it is teaching you how to work with artists. It is teaching you how to sell tickets. It is teaching you how to manage crowd. It is teaching you how to do production. It is teaching how to deal with different vendors, that are food stall vendors. It is teaching you curation. So essentially, Weekender was school. And it taught you everything. So it gave you the confidence to apply the same knowledge that you would get into different fields. So that's why not only me, I think a lot of people at OML had an easy transition into different varied roles, which on a LinkedIn CV sort of thing would look
seems
absurd that this person was doing finance, law, and now is head of marketing or head of ticketing, head of talent management. I became head of content, became a partner, became a CEO. It was like, to me, it definitely made sense. Every time I would go to my, founders and say that, now what? And it could be, now what do you want to do? It's just like, okay, now this is where you're required. This is what you do, So it became easy. Saurabh, who you remember, I'm sure, was hired as head of HR. And he also became...
He gave me my offer letter.
He gave you an offer letter, and he was head of HR. And the first year that he came in, he became head of security.
Have you ever, and this is all you need to know about OML as an organization, can you imagine the HR person acting as your lead bouncer?
Your lead bouncer. He was literally...
Not happening.
Yeah, he was in charge of hiring people, and there he was in charge of throwing people out.
Actually, so they have a common connect between HR and security, right?
They're gatekeepers, essentially. And then he also rose to doing different roles. He also did talent management for a while. He handled live for a while. Then he became the chief business officer. Now he's the CEO at a talent management company. It's not me. It's everybody. You pick anybody from the OML ecosystem in the early 2010s, mid till like 2015. And everybody was hired for X, and now it's doing.
Yeah. Now, as you're saying this, I feel like the outlier now because I left for the same kind of role that I was hired.
No, but you also came in a little more mature period of time. OML. You transitioned. We had reached like teenage. We were teenagers by the time we came. When I joined, we were literally toddlers. So we were all growing up together. And everybody is like, there's no departmental bifurcation.
No silos.
No silos. Whoever's free can do whatever work, and that's the culture that they bred.
Yeah. So speaking of things that grew up, what a segue that is.
Lovely.
The space that OML has represented was always, let's call it loosely, alternative culture, music transitioning into comedy, and of course during his late teenage years, doing branded content and all that. So you've seen that entire transition happen, right? So let's start with this very broad question. We'll probably get a lot deeper within that. How has the alternative culture space in India itself changed during your stint, or maybe even just looking at the last 15 years?
I think a lot of subcultures, as we call it now, alt culture, subculture, whatever. Like the idea of any culture, whether it be subculture, alt culture, is to become pop culture.
Yeah.
And very few transition to pop culture. Like we wanted indie music to transition at that point in time, and that's why the properties that we created, Weekender, Richest, all of these were properties to propel that subculture of independent music into popular culture. But that has happened now to the point where Spotify has, I think it's about 55% non-Bollywood music is what it's called. Now 45% is non-Bollywood. 255 to be Bollywood. If you would have said that when we were doing Weekender, we wouldn't have believed it, right? We were trying to go after a niche. And that niche has now become, part of proper mainstream consumption, right? So a lot of cultures, in my opinion, take time. And you don't know what is going to spark it. Maybe sometimes it's an artist, sometimes it's a movement, sometimes it's just like, in this case, in comedy's case, it was access to free content, which is YouTube. And then now the creator space is benefiting from internet rates being so cheap that their consumption is just gone higher.
Yeah.
So I think it'll be very wrong for any company, organization, artist to claim that they took a subculture to pop culture. There are a lot of things that happen. It's how you ride that sort of wave, however that is what sort of defines itself. So at OML, we saw indie music not going mainstream as much. Maybe we caught it at the wrong time. We did have Pratik Quad, we did have Ritvez, we did have Nuclear, we got some amount of success, but not the success that they have right now. But comedy was a immediate convert, And there are a couple factors that I have sort of realized or sort of in my own assessment found out. A lot of times there's good talent, obviously. Every culture starts with good talent, okay? Because what are you presenting? What are the audience consuming? And the second thing is the bench strength. Like after somebody consumes,
the first 5.
After you consume a culture through an artist, and then the artist has the pressure to keep creating, which obviously does not happen because it's not humanly possible. And then you leave the artist and you go to the culture. So then you see what the bench strength is. So dance, for example, right, b-boying and all, their bench strength is immense. Because you can pick it up. If you're good at it, you can pick it up. Comedy is easier like that. Then music, which has a little more technicality to it. Like you need to learn how to play.
It's difficult to master this thing.
So I think the music scene didn't have, and I might be completely wrong or hated by this, but didn't have the bench strength that it needed to convert to pop culture. But comedy from the start had a lot of bench strength. So it just needed one artist to pop, which AIB, Vidas, all of them did. And then once it did, then everybody sort of
Yeah,
got.
and also helped, like you said, right? The technology wave kind of came along with it. It's almost like I was speaking to won't name names. I mean, these are all names that we know. Backstage with one particular musician who said that this particular person's timing was kind of unfortunate because they just missed the indie pop wave and just missed the streaming wave.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of times it is. I mean, for what is what they're doing pretty well, but I mean, sometimes it is about.
It is that, and it's the thing, right? Like that's why I say you have to ride the wave at the right time. It's like surfing. Now, even though the internet is so matured, it's very difficult for a new comedian to pop.
Yeah.
It sounds counterintuitive that now there's more access and more consumption and everything, but now the problem is of discovery.
Yeah, or competition, just sheer competition.
Yeah, it is discovery, right?
Yeah.
You're competing on a platform where YouTube initially was dominated by comedy. Now it is everything, including like whatever, hip
And
music.
it's also
videos.
because that subculture has now become mainstream culture.
Yeah.
To break into mainstream culture, you probably need to create another subculture.
Yeah.
Exactly. So that's what I feel like. It's like a unique cycle that one goes through. Even music to get popular needed Bollywood, then indie music started. Now indie music is becoming so popular that mainstream Bollywood music, Bollywood movies are taking mainstream song. Kogyam Ka is a Pratik Kuwad song which is on a blockbuster movie, you know. There are many examples of that. Now more and more Oaf and Savera are doing more and more movies. They started as independent musicians, you know. So it's all cyclical. But with comedy now also what's happening is that what I feel, again that cycle is coming. Like Zakir came in, he rode the wave of the internet and he obviously is exceptionally good. And now he's coming onto TV. Like he's just announced, like next, I think in end of the month is when his show is coming on Sony TV.
Yeah.
So imagine a guy that was discovered on YouTube, on a video on AIB's channel, is now going to replace Kapil Sharma's spot.
That is insane.
Yeah.
I mean, insane of the ability of an artist to rise and to transcend mediums.
Yeah.
And also become from a subculture of appealing only to, single guys. Which started off with this persona.
Yeah.
Which is now expanded and matured into a very different persona of who he is, and he leans into his background of poetry and family and so on.
Yeah, because artists evolve, right? So then the truer artists are the ones that I think resonate and sort of are resilient enough to still be relevant. Are the ones who are true to themselves. They evolve their content with their own evolution.
I got a big sense of this when I saw Zakir for the first time. I remember it was at one of those outdoor events that AIB used to do, AIB Divas, these things.
Yeah. That's the video.
That is the video that broke him. And what I remember distinctly about that is, so I hadn't heard Zakir much before, and I don't think any of the audience had either. And before he did the set that made him famous, he was part of what I want to call a panel discussion with all the others. And the thing which I realized much later is Zakir didn't do very well in that setting. We all felt it, and at that point we were like, who is this guy? Like, who is this passenger who is coming with this AIB royalty? Like, his jokes weren't landing. It was clear that he was speaking in a language that was very different from the polished English of everybody else, and all that sort of thing. And we were like, oh, thank goodness, this is like whatever. Like, he stops. And then when he came on, you could also get the sense of, oh, he's okay, let's just whatever. Some bacha must have an open mic or something. And then he just changed that. No, it wasn't just about the explosion, but you could sense that when you were sitting in that audience, we are part of something historic.
Yeah.
You could sense the crowd going from to, I want more of this. I don't care about the others now. I want more of this.
Date, the set that you're talking about, you were part of something historical. That is till date the highest viewed stand-up clip on YouTube.
Amazing. Yeah.
In the world.
Oh, really?
In the world. It's 60 mil.
Oh, wow.
Also, he is...
I feel glad. I feel happy now. You go and see Queen in 1986. Oh, I was part of this audience. And
I was there. Yeah.
I was there. Suddenly, like...
And he's probably the only stand-up comic today who can sell out his show on the day of an India-Pakistan World Cup. Nobody has that kind of pull today.
And that's the thing, right? It's the beauty of this like alt culture getting into mainstream, this thing. Like everybody, at least in India, everybody wants to ape the West, right?
Yeah.
Like, okay, comedy was big in the West now. That's why in India, when comedy started, it was English comedy because it was more of like, oh, I want to be like Kalin, I want to be like Russell Peters at that point in time, whatever, you know. So it started like that. But then it was an artist like Zakir and even AIV to some extent were true to what their roots were. And say, we know the art form, but now we'll make it ours. And now, again, full circle, Zakir will go on and sold out Madison Square Garden. Man.
Yeah.
He'll go on and sold out. He sold 10,000 tickets in Toronto. 10,000 tickets. That's nuts.
Albert Hall.
That Albert Hall, everything. Like Diljit is another great example. Again, started
great example.
Again, started as like sort of a musician and one of the musicians in the Punjabi scene, and now is selling out arenas. Man.
Yeah.
Crypto arena, like that's where the Lakers play, and he's sold.
and much smaller example, or maybe not. I think Bloodywood the same way.
Bloodywood, it's like Bloodywood never exploded in India. That's the weird part. Like that's the beauty about musical art, that it can transcend through boundaries without comedy still.
But in some ways, it is the perfect Indian musical export, right? You have that familiar-ish Bhangra, which we have Mundiya To Bachke to thank for, along with the metal that is familiar, and then high energy on stage, colorful clothes and flute, everything. I mean, I think it's
perfect amalgamation.
It's a perfect amalgamation, which is ideal for a festival crowd at say 6 p.m. Like exotic Indian actors come. And it just blew everybody's socks away with.
Yeah, and Sid Sriram also, same. Sid Sriram also now taking Carnatic music to Coachella. I mean, come on.
Yeah, right.
He thought about like Carnatic music playing in Coachella, but he also added spin to it. Same, like it's just, that's why I love to be in this space, man.
Yeah.
Because through the grunt work and everything, there are these like miracles. I mean, nothing short of miracles.
It's somehow like I'm just trying to connect all of these very discrete examples. You have Bhangra metal, you have singer-songwriter, Carnatic, you have say a Hindi musician, Hindi I wouldn't even call him he's almost like a Sanskrit comedian almost. Like the common thread, the common thread almost is not so much that this is high art and I'm now bringing it to you Westerners or like audience that hasn't noticed before, but like I understand what your expectations are and I'm going to kind of meet you halfway. I'm going to give you what you want, but you're going to like...
I think, I would pull back and say that it's like it's being absolutely committed to your authenticity. Like
but keeping in mind what the audience cares about. Like I feel, for example, if Bloodywood were to play just Bhangra, it would not resonate too much over there. Or like, these Indians are coming and doing something. But they're saying, see, you come to a metal fest, you're expecting loud guitars and all that. We will do that. We will still play what we are... That's what I meant when I say meet you halfway. It wasn't a compromise as much as you came for this, we'll give you that, but with this flavor. And I think that's what each of them, Zakir did that very well with all of us who expected like this kind of comedy. So that's the way I look at these kind of exports or, these amalgamations that make it well.
And true. I've noticed that
Nuclear did that very well, I think.
But again, like they were very true to their
convictions as an artist.
Like Zakir will play the same show that he played in Rang Mandir that he'll play in Madison Square.
Yes.
Like, it's not like he's alternating. Like he'll obviously do some jokes for New York, saying comes from whatever, some jokes on New York. But then he's doing the same show.
90% is still the same.
It's the exception. And even like Sid Sriram's set is the same. Like he's doing the same set. That's another great example of doing that. He's taken the same art form and competing with the West, referencing everything is from India, but then there is, appeasing audiences that are getting a Jerry Seinfeld in the same category, So I think it's just, I don't think there is anything called alternative culture at all, because I feel like fans are there for everything. It's just that we have not discovered them.
And I think that's the power of the internet, right? That you are able to find a community who resonates with what you are doing. And that community is no longer geographically restricted.
Exactly.
And Bloodywood is a great example of that, that nobody sitting in Europe would ever think of encountering Bloodywood until the internet allowed it to happen.
And now I'm kind of thinking like how many other examples of Bloodywood, not necessarily from India, but from like freaking around the world, that might be able to blend metal and, I don't know, like music from, they already have the whole North African Niger music scene exploding. So Yeah, it's kind of interesting to see. Yeah, you're right. Like there is
And even
no
our
alternate culture.
consumption, how much, what different type of stuff that we are also consuming. Like the user days experience, I'm sure you went for it at this thing. It's like, I think it's East African glass beams who played here sometime. Like Egypt, I don't even know, Moroccan inspired electronic music. Like, and it was sold out shows over here. It's exceptional what you think at, sitting in an office, you think what would work and what actually works. I think it's just that punt on the artist that is trying to do something authentic and not trying to appease audiences. In my opinion, it's very tough to find.
Yeah,
because it is a sort of a drug, right? You're getting validation, then you want to give like what's going to get you more validation. In that, if you're staying true to what you're doing, which is what Zakir did, like his audiences wanted English comedy, like, I'm not going to give you that. I'm not that person. It's fine. Don't come to my show. It's cool. It's not being arrogant about it. It's just saying that I don't want to change the way I am, And same for Veer. Veer was like, we could have taken the Hindi route and become like, okay, now Hindi comedy is so popular, I'm going to take that route. But you're like, no, this is not me. I'm going to stay true. And God, man, bloody me, dude.
Yeah, I mean, it is.
Yeah.
It's kind of like we live in a time of a strange dichotomy, right? Everything that you said, there are so many subcultures just floating around the edges, but at the same time, this and I don't want to really shit on the mainstream because it is what it is, but it feels like the middle is more, for lack of a better term, almost algorithmic generated as ever before. It feels like the music is there.
Absolutely.
And that is becoming less and less memorable, I want to say, with all due respect to the biggest pop stars out there. But it feels like the fringes is really, like, fringes have never been more diverse, exciting than ever before.
Because they have to put in more work to
stand out.
To beat the algorithm.
To beat those algo,
You beat the algorithm because I sometimes think to me that, do I really like this? Or is it just being served to me? So it's the people who are on the fringes, the people who are downloading music still or not using Spotify. Yeah, case in point, you, Anuj Gupta, Dharam. A lot of friends around me are like, it's very easy to give into the convenience of technology, but then you are giving something to it. And I feel like there is like a choice exchange.
So now this is an interesting thing to ask you, especially because now we'll move away from our consumer hat, where it's very easy to, have a pint of beer and complain about the state of culture and all that sort of thing. But when you look at it from a business point of view, I'm sure there are considerations, right? This is work last weekender. This artist killed. Do we do more of that this time? In some sense, that is also kind of like an algorithm, right? Ultimately, it is the algorithm. So how do you balance, like...
I mean, I never programmed weekender, but from what I could...
And not necessarily on weekend, I'm just saying in terms of picking up artists, right?
I feel like more than the algorithm or like the success, you would go, at least that's how I would think about it, that you go after the effect. So like, okay, so weekend programming tenets were entertainment, discovery, curiosity, a lot of those tenets, right? So there is joy in discovery, which is what was at the core of weekend.
Which people will complain about during announcement time, but you can go, oh wow, this is awesome.
Which was what the AIB was. Like you didn't know a guy who's come from Indore on that stage with people who have like millions of views, but then you discovered that person and now you're like, now that person will not leave you or you won't leave that, right? We've that weekender so many times. Weekender, you can see people like weekender is very like, it's a beautiful thing to see for us, especially where there is an artist that will start a 4 p.m. set. Richest was one of those artists. Hanuman Kind was another. You start at a 4:35 when there is less crowd, but they are giving it their all, and then you can see hordes of people
just coming.
Hordes of people coming in, because what a festival also does, much like an algorithm, is herd mentality starts happening. You see some people rushing towards the stage, you will something's happening. Or you hear music like tone that you like and then you'll rush to that. I've seen Hanuman Kind fill up a empty stage at Weekender at 5:30.
Wow.
It was literally, and it was competing with a bigger band, I can't remember which one. And he just went for it.
And he's a little small guy.
He's a small guy.
But
It was
presence.
hot. It was like, he was like, I'm going to own this crowd today. There were like 20 people, including me, in the crowd. It ended up being a 4,500 people
Wow.
at the end of it. And
Which at 6 p.m. is something.
and something, and this is I think it was the hip hop / electronic stage that was there. So the main stages at the Doorist and the Bacardi stage had the bigger bands.
Yeah.
But this guy just pulled it, sheer determination, sheer performance. And so that's the emotion that you try to grab with programming. Like with Comicstan also, when we used to program, the judges and the contestants that used to be selected, you want the underdog. You want the one that is going to be a winner. You want all of those things, but you don't want the same type of person.
Yeah.
So that's the way you sort of beat the decision. You don't go after a personality type. You go after the audience reaction that you desire.
And that's so interesting because we were speaking to Siddharth Ravindran, Pacifist, Tasri Talkies, and many more. And one of the things that we were talking about, which seems like a weird phrase to use as a musician, is user experience. It's almost like there's a certain kind of, like, I'm going to use your term, audience reaction that you kind of want. And I find that, like, at least for me, some of my favorite music is the ones that have user experience in mind and not look at me, come and perform how many notes per second I can play. But I have thought of you as like, sure, you're going to give me 20 minutes or 23 minutes of your time with if you're listening to Pink Floyd's Echoes, but there is a reason for each and every second to exist. I have thought about you. This is not for me to show you how much I can play. So maybe, and the question I really have for you, again, these are interesting questions to ask to what is essentially a business person in the space of content, is how much do you drive or how much do you think about the experience beyond just the art that a performer, be it music or comedy, is giving on stage? Like, there are some musicians who will just come, play their 5 songs exactly as they are on streaming, and they will leave without any impact being felt on the audience. And then you have somebody like, say, a Pineapple Express coming in, playing the same songs, but absolutely blowing it out of the water with respect to how they express it on stage. Is this something that you have thought about? Is this something that you've asked your artist to consciously think about?
Yeah, I feel, because the thing is, the great part about being in the business that I am and have been privileged to be in a long time is that the gap between consumption and creation is very short for me. So what is being created is what I will consume anyways. So the user I am the user. So whatever the experience is, the feedback is pretty quick, because I didn't work or haven't still worked in a place where I don't consume the content that I'm creating or helping create or enabling to create, right? Be it AIB or trying to create funny sketches, Zakir doing stand-up, any musician, like it's like we always were fortunate enough, or our taste was diverse enough that all of that, you become the consumer.
Yeah.
And then it's very difficult, and then you have access to the talent, and then the talent does want you to give them your opinion. So your opinion is always from a consumer perspective. At least I have taken that way.
Yeah.
Because it's easier to say, oh, if you say do something like this, it'll get more views, or abuse in the video, it'll get more views. Those are fine things. But I think and again, there was a OML upbringing also, that we don't go after things that work, because then what's the fun, right? Yeah. There's nothing that is happening that you have created.
And there is a mainstream for that. Whatever works, there is always a mainstream for it, which
somebody's doing that.
Somebody's doing that. Somebody's like, a repeatable formula hai, this works, let's do it again and again.
I mean, to each its own.
Nothing wrong with it.
Yeah.
I think there's a space for that.
Yeah. And for us, always user experience is exactly this. Like, what is the emotion that it can create in a person? Right? Like Bruce Springsteen used to famously say that every show he gives it all till now, because he tells his band this, right? Some people, this might be the first show that they'll ever attend, and some people, there might be the last show that they'll ever attend. So think of those two people and then perform.
Wow.
It's insane.
I mean, I've heard about the first one because I've heard it from another perspective. Yeah, we are playing this song for the 1000th time, but there might be somebody there who's hearing it for the first time. But now when you bring that angle of this might be the last thing that they ever experienced perhaps. Wow, okay, that makes sense.
And then for Weekender also, right? When Weekender started, like the whole thing about going out to watch music live in an outdoor space was very mainstream of Bollywood or stuff like that. You would go for like a Bollywood artist or like you'd go for a college festival, stuff like that. It never, like you're paying money to attend a festival.
Yeah.
That is going to give you diverse music, some of which you might like, some of which you might hate. But you're still in that zone of people who are all, you know, either like music or are here to get entertained or discover and stuff. So you become very conscious that you are starting, like you said, like you're taking a subculture or a culture consuming audience into the mainstream.
Yeah.
Because see, everybody wants to be in the mainstream. There's nothing wrong with it, but that's where you get more freedom to do or like more funding, money, all of that. You can sustain a business. Like I always say, art cannot survive without commerce. So you have to think of both. But at the same time, that's what a lot of comics also did. They were very conscious about, we are creating this genre for the future.
Sure.
You know, for more people to come into it and for people to consume it more and more. So they also did a lot of business decisions, gigs at cheaper venue. They've gone, like Zakir has gone and opened up venues that never did stand-up comedy ever. And now there are shows happening there. I think, if I'm not wrong, when I left, he had done some 100 cities in India. 100 cities. Indie music has not traveled to 100 cities.
Yeah.
But this guy has gone and opened up venues. Now that people know that a comedian, this is how a comedian is. This is, you can go and watch a show because the theatre is happening everywhere in the country.
Yeah.
But stand-up comedy so he had that in him. So then he goes with that pressure that I'm opening up these gates so that more people can come in and I can also come in again. So it's all, I think the true artists always think of the audience and then what they are contributing to the entire
scene
the
almost.
scene, the scene,
So as we said,
the culture, the scene, you're trying to instill consumption patterns into people, like much like algorithms. And if they have a bad user XP in the beginning, then they leave. Like comedy mein maza nahi aata. You know, that's an easy thing. So then people who are opening doors, they have that. I mean, at least I've seen that with the talent I work with.
Yeah, plus they have the goodwill, they get the, you know, I mean, I've always thought that it's, if you help out those below you, that's going to serve you very well for later in your career. I don't say this like, I mean, I feel this as a ex-marketing person or ex-advertising person specifically. But yeah, I guess it works in this context.
The way I think about people who build the scene is, like, if you are a large ship, you can pull a lot of small ships with you.
Yeah.
But what a person like that who creates the scene is, they're the lighthouse. They give light to every small boat which is around there, so that those boats can actually move, and you know, that rising tide lifts all boats. And that is what someone who creates the scene does. Saying that I am now become big enough that I want to bring out the entire thing above, so that it not only creates, I mean, of course, there is the commercial angle to it, but it also creates an entire art form which people have normalized consuming and becomes a part of their media diet in that sense. I think that is a great contribution to me.
Yeah. Exactly. And that brings me back to the thing that I said earlier, right? Bench strength. Like you want, the larger the bench strength, the larger the longer the gestation of a culture. In that sense, like, because the more people that will choose that art form as their own, is like, then supply can only, I mean, if supply is not there, demand will not be there at all, right? So then you need people to keep adding into it.
Yeah, and it needs to be fresh, right? Otherwise, people will be like, okay, that was a wave that happened for 2 years, right? Like, for example, there are people who have, for example, fallen out of love with Indian comedy because they loved it at one point of time. Maybe the bench strength to their eyes did not reach those standards again, or it just wasn't fresh enough for them. I guess that almost it's not just about the bench strength, but I feel like it's almost incumbent on those who have had the luxury that somebody's opened doors for them to not just do the same thing, but almost take it a step further, if that makes any sense, right?
It does, but also like I feel that overall that's also a product of what is now at offering. What is a comedy? What is a comedian anymore? It's like stand-up comedy is a form of comedy.
Yeah.
But then there are comedy creators like Focused Indian, like Just Neil Things, who are doing sketches on Instagram and are funnier than maybe some of the stand-up comics.
Yeah.
So I think if somebody through stand-up comedy made comedy consumable, then you can change your art form of what you're consuming. To your the media diet now they want comedy.
Exactly.
Now what they're consuming on comedy is different. But then somebody has at some point converted a person who maybe only watched emotional content or went only for music concert. Now comedy is one of the things that has. So a lot of that happened. Again, like talking about like subgenres becoming mainstream genres. Comedy started with sketches on YouTube, going into stand-up comedy, going back into sketches, now going back to stand-up comedy, now doing roast and different type of format. Yes, but what remains same is comedy.
Yeah.
Right? Comedy got popular. Indie music, right? Indie music could be a metal band, could be a hip-hop artist, could be a singer-songwriter, whatever. But you needed like a Pratik Kuhad or something to say, okay, there is something beyond
Bollywood.
So now you created that. If it's not only what your particular subgenre is, but it's also what you are trying to like sort of through your music or through your art form trying to get people to say, hey, come look over here also, there's something happening. Like podcasting, right? Like true crime podcasting is my new favorite subgenre. It's exceptional, like how these kids DC crime podcast.
Yeah. Oh, Ayush Mishra is so good.
Is exceptional, right? Like it's storytelling with every oomph and everything that you would see in like a show. Will that I am consuming more of his podcast than watching true crime on Netflix.
Sure. Yeah.
But I have interest on his podcast because of watching true crime, right? So I think that's the beauty of art, right? It's so fluid. And now because of access and more people getting into it and stuff like that, you can find your version of that. And your taste will evolve, as does a comedian's art or a musician's art and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But I feel like comedy in general in India, to your point of India, like people who were who started watching say older stand-up comedy and maybe are not enjoying that, but they are subscribing to like Just Neil and Focused Indian and these type of people who they're still consuming comedy. So I feel like people also evolve. Some artists evolve, some artists don't evolve. But once I think you have a strong enough affiliation to a certain type of genre or certain type of culture, be it comedy, music, true crime podcasts, whatever, then you continue on your journey.
Yeah.
In that, yeah.
So one theory that I hold is that, and this is usually in response to people, they say that kids these days have a short attention span and all that sort of thing. And sure, we see where that comes from. We go through it in our own lives, whether we are 15 or whether we are like 80. It's just that there's so much out there that to me, and I'm being very generous to a young person when I say this, is it's almost like you need to quickly find what it is that you are going to be interested in, purely because there's so much out there to filter through, right? Is that what you call the short attention span? And then once you find the one or two things that, okay, this is interesting, this is what I am paying attention to, pay attention to what you are paying attention to is a quote I came across recently, and then you go deep into that. So the broad thesis that I have, and I haven't borne this out anywhere, it's only anecdotal, is our attention spans have to be short during the filtering phase, but then after we decide what we are going to invest time in, especially time in, we'll go deep into that. And for me, the proof is that even in this age of short attention spans, the most consumed content on YouTube typically tends to be around 20 minutes or those deep dives. Or if you look at it from a podcasting perspective, Amit Verma shows that run over 5 hours, or even in the US, for what it's worth, what do you think about him? People are spending 3.5 hours listening to Joe Rogan, or even if you don't want that example, Dan Carlin's Hardcore History and all that. So this is a broad thesis I have. As somebody who's worked in that space, seen all kinds of formats, etc. What do you think? Like, is there some truth to that?
Yeah, 100%. Like, I feel like I don't know about the discovery space, but because I don't know how people are filtering through it. Like I feel like on Instagram, essentially, and this is very again anecdotal, you go to your discover page and then you're just more in there. I rarely, now people are searching for it more and more, like cat videos and that, but like essentially the algorithm has become so good that, or your brain has been trained so well, either or, I don't know.
That's a great question. We don't know which one it is.
We don't know what it is.
Recursive singularity is
I have given up that we live in the matrix and who's controlling who, nobody knows. But essentially, that the deep dive I completely understand. Like for example, I like business podcasts, so I will listen to an acquired episode which is business podcast for 4 hours because they deep dive into a company and tell me the story of a company. But I don't consume the same on Instagram.
Sure.
Like I'm not following business journals. I'm not following ET Now. I mean, sorry, Economic Times. I'm not following that. But I know for long form, I think it's what you said. People know specifically what they like. And I think you rely less on the YouTube algo for your own discovery then you rely on an Instagram algo for discovery, like if that makes sense. Which is somehow it is the attention thing only. That Instagram, you're literally doing it on the move, stuff like that. Maybe YouTube, you know when you're at home or
1 hour is there,
or you're driving or whatever, you're being driven or you're in a cab or you're in commute, then you know what you want. And then you've heard of something or you've maybe seen the trailer on Instagram and now you're sort of double clicked onto it. Yeah.
So in fact, if you look at it, how it has played out, that YouTube did shorts in response to reels, right? But if you go and speak to any large creator, they would say that they would get a lot of engagement on shorts, but none of their short form engagement turns into long form content.
Yeah.
That audience does not translate, right? Because when you are coming into YouTube, you are coming with the intention of, if in the old world where you used to watch YouTube on the laptop, you would go full screen and there is nothing else, right? But the behavior on Instagram is to move your thumb.
Yeah.
Right? The thumb is not stopping. But on YouTube, you have given yourself that everything else is out and I'm consuming it in that way. So I think these platforms sort of also evolved in ways of how people are responding to them and what content mode I am in when I'm coming to the platform.
It's actually very interesting. I just saw this video yesterday of, I think the head of Instagram,
Adam Mosseri.
Maserati, I'm talking.
Mozart is Mozart and Moriarty put together.
or taking his boss, move very fast and break things very quickly. Maserati, But Adam Mosseri.
Mosseri put out a video and he said, why don't you put long form video on Instagram? And he gave a great answer. He's like, the reason Instagram is for sharing and for connecting with your friends. There are two things. One is to connecting with your friends is the basic thing. So how do you do that? You chat with your friends and then you find videos that you want to share with somebody. So essentially, it's very rare as in it'll be more rare for you to share a YouTube video than for you to share a reel.
That's true, yeah.
Because the platforms are designed that way. They're designed to, hey, this is what they want you to be the, word-to-word marketing, right? That's why share is like a big...
The holy grail
of engagement, right? If you've shared it, means you're actually into it. Then the algorithm gets really it's eating a scan of spinach or red. It's like, then it's like popping muscle, like now I have got you. So you'll see yourself, these are our own, we can see our own this thing. I'll share more Instagram reels than I'll share YouTube videos.
Of course, yeah.
Because consumption wise also I'm consuming less or lesser unique quantities of YouTube videos than I'm consuming of reels. Now, is that attention or is that just design? I don't know. But that's the pattern.
Yeah, and if you take Instagram here and YouTube here, podcast will probably be over here. And you can draw discovery becomes more difficult over here, but it's likely, much like you and your 4-hour podcast, that the engagement is also going to engagement, fandom, etc. So I mean, it's, when I look at this, when I look at the landscape this way, it actually, rather than despair, it actually gives me joy. Like you put in the effort of creating such a huge, I don't want to say entry barrier, but you have put in the work. It's relatively easy to put out an Instagram reel. No hate from Gen Z watching this, please. And relatively difficult to sustain a podcast and get an audience for it who is willing to download an app and then search and then subscribe, all those hoops. But then once you got there, you're pretty much like, you're there, you're there. So it feels like in some sense, and I mean, sometimes I remember once Freakonomics, one of the biggest podcasts in the world, saying something like, and we had 1 million downloads last month. And I was like, that's it? That's it? And I'm like, wow, okay, so that's the apex that we are all like, but
that is a ceiling in many
but
ways.
then the flip side to that is 1 million people are actually consuming you probably all the way through. So to me, it's kind of like, okay, the more difficult it is to do, sure, if an audience comes along for it, then you're pretty much got them, is what I think.
I mean, that I don't know the monetization of the very core engaged audience is yet. Like, because if you look at now, let's talk about the money aspect of it. Reels get you more brands value than like a podcast. Even though at a podcast you have an audience that is committed. If you would call cost per contact would be higher at a podcast level because you've done like third level of filtering out people. But it won't get you reach. I mean, it won't get you the numbers, right? 1 million being I guess the ceiling. Or like maybe Joe Rogan gets
whatever that number is.
But then it's the platform that's supporting him, not brands. So essentially,
there we go.
Right, like the biggest podcaster in the world is not supported by brands; it's supported by the platform, right? So essentially, the brands or the platforms through design have created this view count or like share count or whatever as the metrics for engagement. But that is surface level engagement, right? What you guys do, what podcasts do is a double click, which means that double click, triple click, which means that this person really cares about this. You know, even if it's a lower number, they are better suited to buy your product than somebody who's seen a reel with 1,000 other reels. But the balance hasn't happened, or it will not happen.
Or it may not. That's the thing. It may never end up.
For example, this reminds me of what New York Times used to do. At least I don't know if they do it anymore. Is that at the end of the year they would actually not release the list of the most read articles, but they would actually release the list of the articles which were completely read. So if you are doing a 10-minute read, what percentage of people actually read through the entire 10 minutes? And they said this is the high bar of content. Is not to say that, oh, this particular thing was clicked as many number of times. And it goes back to the same thing of, going deep. The way I think of it is that if tomorrow a YouTube creator who's doing long form, goes silent for some reason versus Instagram creator who's doing short form goes silent for some reason, how many people are going to leave a comment, "Hi, next video ko upload karoge?" Right? It's so much happens so much more on YouTube. Whereas in Instagram, you will not say that they will not go search for their reel ki, "Arey, aapka reel nahi aaya." And that is the difference in terms of how.
That's a great example. That's a great example because I also feel like because the way the algorithm work, like Instagram, and you can see a lot of creators complain about it, right? It's anxiety inducing or like for people to create content. Now obviously there are tools like scheduling and stuff like that that you can do. You can bank episodes and then maybe
but you still need to create.
You still need to have a story, otherwise your reach reduces. And that reach reduction, like when you see your reel reached like 4 million people and now it's just reached 1 million people, you uploaded maybe at the gap of 7 days. Instagram slaps you, bro. Where were you? Now you have to start again. Now you have to do more frequent content because they're a platform. They need to keep feeding the beast. And on YouTube, you're subscribing to somebody. Follow, I think subscribe is higher value than a follow. Because anyways, when you subscribe to somebody, there is intention, and then you're going into that person's thing and saying what are they up to, right? In Instagram, you just doom scrolling. So I think, and then when you subscribe to a podcast, it's even more. Right? So I think that it's just turned the other way. Like YouTube also doesn't get the same amount of brand revenue that maybe an Instagram creator will get. Probably Instagram creator getting more this thing. That's why the YouTube creators are now moving towards mini TV, doing shows by themselves. Like, obviously they get, but now to imagine you're a creator who's popular on both platforms. Okay. And now you have certain amount of money that you want to make. and there is an easier way and there is a difficult way.
Yeah.
And then there is like I don't blame them for whatever. Some people are pure. Like Bhuvan, for example, has moved. It's like saying he doesn't post on Instagram. He doesn't do anything. He still has the popularity because he knows he's so good that even if he posts one video in a month or maybe even less, he doesn't know, and concentrates on his larger shows and stuff like that, he'll still get in the audience.
Yeah.
But that's very few creators in this creator sort of race that everybody is in. That every year, every day, there are like hundreds and millions of more creators being added.
Yeah.
And you don't know when somebody will pop. Yeah, Yashraj Mukherjee was a great example.
Yeah.
He was doing what he was doing, man. And then what
explodes on the scene.
Yeah.
And now they're like, oh, you can create parody, music, or pop culture moments and become popular. What?
Popular, yeah.
So
And the entire genre that has
sprung, right? Like, so that's Instagram. Instagram, you have to be like, tomorrow I'll get beaten if I don't do it.
Yeah. I want to actually there's a good way to segue into this. We want to talk about creator journeys, right? Like for example, so one of the things that we always say in our program and these are all folks who just want like a side thing to do. Not too many of them are aspiring to be like, headlining YouTube Fan Fest or something of that sort. But the question constantly is like, or the things, it weighs on their mind like, okay, should my first piece of content be excellent and like all that sort of thing. And we always say like, go to any creator that you like. I'm the most famous in the world. Take Mr. Beast if you like. Go to his videos, sort all of them in reverse, and you will kind of see that evolution itself happening. It's not like his first video was destined to be great or something. You will see an inflection point happening somewhere, and then that will happen. Now, I know this a little bit applies to the Indian scene as well. Like I remember what Kenny and Abhish's first videos were like so many years back. Their case, I suppose, is slightly different because they were honing their chops and audience in front of a live audience, and they were not YouTube or algorithm dependent to get to where they are. But very broadly speaking, with all the creators that you kind of manage, especially those who built their followings almost entirely online, what has that broad journey been for them? Like if you were to kind of average it out, we would think that, and from whatever we've seen, that start off imperfectly, keep doing it for a while, you will improve. Something might click at some point or it could be luck, it could be a new insight, a different way of doing things like what Mr. Beast discovered, and then you will kind of go from there.
I think they're two different, not too different. I think that there are a couple of different schools of thought, but the one that have been successful again is like authenticity to themselves.
Sure.
And right now what I'm seeing with the younger creators is that there's so much commitment to authenticity that the quality to a naked eye, like mine would be like, okay, this is not good, but like they know exactly what they're doing because they're testing also. A lot of time now it's Instagram, and Instagram is easier to test. A lot of time you're testing for reaction and looking at all of that and, taking it ahead. A lot of time a bad video teaches you much more than a great video would.
Yeah.
Because a great video gets anxiety inducing, okay?
Yeah.
What do I top this up with?
Yeah.
But a bad video will make you say, okay, this didn't work. Because when people say like, this is not funny, this is not whatever. Mostly it's like, this is not funny. Whatever. But I think the journey for every creator is that they find, like you said, through experiment, like much with musicians also, you find through some errors, you'll find something that works for you, and then you just go for it. Like we, at my current organization, we manage this young creator called Rebel Kid, and she basically, I think she was a vlogger and stuff like that, and she realized that, bad things kept happening to her, like cancellation of flight, that just kept happening to her. And she just started ranting about it, and she's like, now I tracked all of this. Like now, something that was like, you would rant about like your flight being cancelled, bag being lost, stuff like that, right? And then that just became, I think now she's like, now she's taking it into a completely different thing. But what it does is it helps you find your voice. Because what you're trying to do is you're trying to find the tone and the method in which you talk, which we found very quickly. Right?
Yeah.
It was like seeing things that you have thought of that this is absurd, and then they make it absurd. But it's still the thing that you were thought about, like honest flights and all of those things.
Yeah, it was
Absurd things that happen on a flight. Like, how are we living in this world where, like, kids are just crying all the time, and like, cheap men are checking out air hostesses, and all of us are sitting as if we are just normal.
Yeah.
You just picked up that thing, and that became their thing, right? Kenny was like just doing very good boy observations, but taking it in an absurdist sense, right? So you never know where you're going to find that.
Your voice.
Nobody knows that. Nobody comes to saying, I'm going to be a creator and I know exactly what I want to do. Those are the ones that I would not bet on.
So actually, if you think of it, if you just go back to your school days, right? And think of the notebooks you all used to have, right?
Yeah.
All the stuff which you were supposed to do, we would write in the main.
In the main part.
In the margins is what we wanted to do. On the back of the notebook is we wanted to do. The reason it is called the margin, because margin is where you discover yourself. Right?
Okay.
You do the mainstream stuff, the margin is where you discover yourself, and it is the margin which allows you to make it to the mainstream eventually.
Yeah.
But the margin has to exist. And I think what a YouTube or an Instagram or a TikTok, whatever it is, has allowed is that the margin can exist today.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that margin is the subculture.
Margin is a subculture. Exactly.
It's the subculture, right? Like, where you would be like, okay, musical comedy is a subculture of comedy.
Yeah.
Comedy is comedy. So as long as you are being authentic to it,
Exactly.
it will, like, Yashraj is a musical comedian.
Yeah.
He created take a video, use music to make it funny. Like, yeah, who would have thought of that, dude? That's margin thinking, right? That's margin thinking that now is so mainstream that people are paying money to promote mainstream stuff. Like, shows are paying him money to promote in his style. It's nuts to think about it, that if you are authentic to your margin, then what it can do for you.
That's episode title right there, by the way. Stay authentic to your margin. That's what
And the thing is that it's very easy to say, to be authentic.
Yeah. And it's an oft abused word.
Yeah, imagine, are we also authentic, or are we just a product of what we hear and say? Am I saying all of these things because I think I'll sound good because I've heard it in different podcasts? Or am I actually thinking, I don't know.
What is authenticity?
What is authenticity? And then for a creator to be authentic to what they actually believe in all of the noise, because you and I are consuming content, they are consuming the reaction of the content that they're creating, right?
That's important.
Like, the share, the comments, all of that. And in that, for anybody to be authentic to themselves,
It's very difficult, right? And what is your...
that is the reason you get rewarded with success.
Yeah, and
It actually takes courage.
it takes courage, because what if you are being as authentic, as brave, laying it all out there, and it turns out, forget that's not what the algorithm. What if people start like hating on you, or whatever?
And always people will. Highest, take any video that is the highest like.
100%. Yes.
1/10 of that will have be dislikes.
Yeah.
So it's a part of that, and that's what also builds the character of a creator. Like, how affected are they getting? Like, it's a great example. I keep saying, like, imagine the amount of people must be angry with him for not putting the content frequently as much as he used to.
Yeah.
But he figured another way out to, talk to his audience, which is through his shows, the OTT shows that he's doing, the YouTube shows that he's doing, movies that he's doing. He's figured out how to keep his audience engaged in the way he wants. And
He calls the shots and not...
He calls the shot because he's also not in an arrogant way. It's just like, I know what to deliver my authentic self to you. Like, Zakir, for example, not choosing to go on an OTT where his fans are already built. He's saying, now I want to venture into TV, and doing a show on Sony TV is a big...
Yeah, it's a big deal.
It's being authentic to himself, because his comedy, like you said, gone from being like that, a guy's guy, to now the older kid in the family that you all are proud of, and makes you laugh, and makes you think, and makes you cry. He's taken that journey, and now he's like, now the audience, now I need to take this to a wider audience, which is a family audience, which is Sony TV.
Yeah.
I want to ask you one thing, right? That you have seen this entire space, multiple genres evolve, right? But it was also at the time when the core or the peak consumer of this was someone who was like you. Now there is an entire generation of people who are unlike you,
Fair.
right? I'm sure they think differently from how you think.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Now, you as a person sitting where you are, sitting with that roster of talent to look at, right? How do you update yourself or say that my bias of what is in the margin or in the mainstream does not cloud what is needed today to grow this culture even further? How do you take care of that?
That's a really good question. I struggle with it, as anyone would, because as much as enablers of creators or enablers of content that we all are, there are biases, there are preferences, there are consumption patterns that you take. But in my current organization at Collective, what the value is to empower. Okay, the value is to empower creators. So a lot of times, and we have a young-ish sort of like 25 is our median age for employees that are there. So the great thing about many of these companies, even at OML, is that your diptych is your
Yeah.
So a lot of time, I like to talk to obviously all of them, take ideas to all of the age groups and see whether it works or not. But most of the time, I would say, my learning comes from the creators. If you are at certain point of popularity / success, then you have cracked something that I have not been able to. And the more I am unable to understand why a person is doing well, the more curious I am about their audience. So then essentially my updating at Collective, we manage 450 creators, 450 talent, like from the biggest Bollywood celebrities to like creators who are doing podcasts, like Desi Crime, like there's a varied, I would say, platter of artists that work at with the Collective. So essentially my sort of consumption bias, I try to sort of mitigate that by seeing things that actually I don't like and try to understand how it works. And I would say 80% of the time I'm convert then. As you could be at a music festival.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. Actually, that's a great analogy. Great way to tie it all together. Actually.
Yeah, because I am in the. Imagine you are at the music. You are at a festival of content, culture, and you have come there because you like something, but you can see herds of people going towards some other stage.
Yeah.
Then you're curious about it. Sometimes you like it, sometimes you're not. But in my opinion, most of the time, at least the successful creators, you will end up becoming a convert because you're like, yeah, I understand why this person is popular. And somehow for me, decoding why they are popular is good enough reason for me to become their fan.
Yeah. Right.
And that might be a business mindset because then I know how I can help them make more money or help them place in or like create shows with them that can help me sell to a brand or decode consumption pattern that I wouldn't have thought of only. Right? K-pop, and I don't know who must have thought that K-dramas are going to become a thing. Whoever decoded that must be a genius. But it must have gone to somebody who definitely didn't like it. They would have seen somebody in their office or somebody in their house watching it and saying, what the hell is happening? Maybe consumed it and saw it, and now it's like Crunchyroll. Like there's a bloody platform for K-dramas in India. Could you ever imagine? So I think that I struggle with it. There's no clear solution to it. But I get curious about content that I don't like.
Which others happen to like.
Or there are numbers to show that they're popular. So you pull the sort of veil on it and see what's sort of happening, and then that decoding sort of helps you understand that sort of audience base more, and then say then your brain algorithm starts like, then maybe people who like crime podcast also like vlogging. Some like like connection that happen, and then you say, okay, maybe I can do like. One of the ideas that we've been toying with is that how do we come up with new show ideas like that? If you go to the market and in the non-fiction space, there are either competition formats working or there are documentaries working. So what can I offer that has not been offered, right? And all the time, and as you speak to brands and you speak to platform node, they all rely on insight. What is your insight?
Yeah.
What is the insight? So where my insight comes from content that you don't like. The insight comes from pulling the wheel on people that content is working, but you don't know why it's working.
Yeah.
The more you decode that, the more insight you get. Like the K-drama would have been an insight. Somebody would have said that let's come and dub this because this is as good as any school drama that India is not supplying. Like, college drama is not supplying, and this is pre-mini TV time, right? Now mini TV is only supplying those type of shows. They're creating shows that have worked in the K-drama space for the Indian consumer. It localized it and easily that, right? So that has come from inside. Somebody who didn't like K-drama has seen what works, decoded it, now re-engineered it there. So because of the business, my job is to create more and more ideas that people haven't thought of. So it has to naturally take me to a place where I am not, if I keep creating stuff that I want to consume, then I will become the algorithm.
So you have to be willing to be uncomfortable and say that my taste is being questioned. What I think is good content is being questioned. And now it is for me to work and figure out why this is working.
It is an evolution, right? Like we were talking before the recording, right? Like you, for a purist at one point of time of content consumption, now you are a curious and now maybe you are more diverse with your taste. I was also the same. Everybody went with the same. Stand-up comedy should be English. Then came Zakir, like, oh my God, in these the best. Then came sketches and like, oh, this is the... But every time there is a...
It's been challenged. Your own algorithm.
You don't know what's going to work, man. I never thought I would spend 2 hours listening to a 21-year-old tell me about a crime that happened in Tamil Nadu. But I'm doing it. I looked at it as the same suspicion as this sentence would make a lot of people think at home. Why? But
and I'm sure this is insanely exciting because it's how many of these intersections in what format exists where, in what language.
That's the beauty of the internet as much as the algorithm is. It basically puts so many things on the map together.
Like, for example, if you think of the OTT stage, right? They are creating content which nobody thought is monetizable. So in very, very specific Indian language, Hindi heartland content, not made in the way, but look at the subscription numbers, look at the revenues and the way people are responding to that content. And I think that is a great place to be as someone who lives in India today. When I personally feel it is a great time to be alive in India today, being in this space of content because it is just exploding at every level. And I feel I'm very blessed that, that I can witness this, even if I'm witnessing it from the ringside and I'm not in the center. But just to see this happen is amazing.
That's why in the center.
Fair enough.
Listen, I just want to thank you, Dhruv, because very rarely you get to speak to someone who has seen the evolution of not one space but multiple spaces. And we continue to push for that space to grow even further, whether it is of selfish interest, whether it is for artistic interest, whether it's for commercial interest. But I think this is what I really took out of the conversation.
I will try to circle things back to gigs again and try to make a painful analogy to end all of this, which is, to me, the hallmark of a good gig is how impatient I am to see them live again. And I feel like we've been speaking for, 1.5 hours, but honestly, I can't wait to have you on again because there's still about 10 questions I already have, which I have not asked you. And I'm sure we could do this for another 4 or 5 hours if we wanted to. But Dhruv, thanks so much, man. This has been great. So many of these, like I told you, were questions that I always wanted to ask you, except if we were either at a gig setting, drunk, or both. So it's fine. It's great to be able to do this sober once, and I'm hoping that we'll be able to do one more.
I'd love to come back. So, I really thought it was 10-15 minutes. I think that's to bring you back to your own.
Oh, there you go. We were your discovery.
My meter of a good gig is that, oh my God, the
set over already. Oh wow, yeah.
So that's what this conversation felt.
Amazing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Cheers. Yeah.